The Mockery and the Project. The Solarian Empire's delegation stepped through Earth's orbital shipyard with an air of practiced diplomacy that barely concealed their condescension. Admiral Rise watched them closely, maintaining a polite smile while inwardly seething at their obvious disdain. The lead diplomat, Ambassador Nix, trailed her 4 elongated fingers across the hull of the ESS Defender, Earth's most advanced warship. "Fascinating construction," she said, her translator converting her melodic, multi-toned language into flat English. "The materials you've chosen are quaint." Reyes kept her face neutral. After 15 years of military service, she'd learned to hide her emotions well. The Defender represents the pinnacle of Earth's space defense technology. Titanium graphene composite, hull, phase shift shielding, and our newest plasma lance weaponry. Ambassador Nix's iridescent eyes flickered with what humans had come to recognize as amusement. The other 3 delegates exchanged glances, their facial ridges pulsing with blue bioluminescence, the Solarian equivalent of suppressed laughter. "Of course," Nix said, gesturing to one of her companions. "Technician Vex, your assessment." The smaller Solarian stepped forward, holding up a device no larger than a human palm. It projected a holographic display that danced with complex equations and scanning results. "Primitive propulsion system," Vex announced, not bothering to hide his disdain. "Their shielding would fail against even our civilian transport's defensive capabilities. Weapons, negligible. The plasma containment is unstable." Reyes exchanged a glance with Captain Chen, her second in command. They had anticipated this reaction. The Solarians had appeared in Earth's orbit 6 months ago, with technology centuries beyond humanity's reach. Their faster-than-light drives, gravity manipulation, and energy weapons made Earth's most advanced systems look like children's toys. "Perhaps you'd like to see our weapon systems in action," Rise offered. "We could arrange a demonstration." "That won't be necessary," Ambassador Nix replied with a dismissive wave. "We've seen enough to understand Earth's position. The Empire appreciates your hospitality. It will make the integration process smoother." The way she said integration left no doubt about what it meant. Earth would become another resource world in the vast Solarian Empire, with humans serving as a convenient labor force. The price of resistance would be annihilation, a fact the Solarians had made abundantly clear during their first contact. After the delegation returned to their gleaming ship, a vessel that made Earth's largest battle cruiser look like a lifeboat by comparison, Reyes made her way to the secure elevator at the center of the station. She pressed her palm against the scanner, then submitted to retinal and voice verification before the doors opened. "Sublevel Omega," she commanded as the doors sealed behind her. The elevator descended rapidly, bypassing the station's official 20 levels and continuing deep below, into a section that didn't exist on any public schematics. When the doors opened again, Reyes stepped into a vast, dimly lit command center where 30 of Earth's top military and scientific minds worked at various stations. Dr. Layla Ibrahim, head of Project Eclipse, looked up from her console as Reyes approached. "How did the tour go?" "Exactly as expected," Reyes replied. "They think we're technological infants, barely worth conquering, except for our resources and strategic position." Ibrahim smiled thinly. "Their arrogance works in our favor. How much time do you think we have?" "Not enough." The ambassador mentioned integration procedures beginning within 2 standard months. Reyes looked around the facility. "Where are we with Eclipse?" Ibrahim led Reyes to a massive viewport that dominated one wall of the command center. Beyond the reinforced glass lay a cavernous construction bay, and within it, suspended by massive gantries, was a ship unlike anything humans had ever built. While the Defender and other Earth vessels followed conventional design principles, aerodynamic where possible, utilitarian where necessary, this ship defied traditional aesthetics. It was perfectly spherical, its surface a deep, non-reflective black that seemed to absorb light. No visible weapons, no engine ports, No external features of any kind marked its smooth surface. "The ESS Umbra," Ibrahim said with quiet pride. 90% complete. Core systems are operational. We're just finalizing the integration protocols and running simulations on the primary mechanism. "Will it work?" Rise asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ibrahim hesitated. "In theory, absolutely. In practice, we've never had the opportunity to test it against actual Solarian technology. Our simulations are based on our scans and what little information we've gleaned from their educational materials. But if our understanding of their physics is correct, then yes, it should work." "Should isn't good enough, Doctor. We're betting humanity's future on this." "I know," Ibrahim replied. "That's why we need more time. Another month of testing, at minimum." Ray shook her head. "We don't have a month. Based on the ambassador's tone, I'd say we have 2 weeks, maybe less, before they drop all pretense and begin their integration, which we both know means subjugation." Ibrahim's expression hardened. "Then we accelerate the timeline. Double shifts, all personnel. I'll personally oversee the final calibrations. How soon can it be ready for a field test?" 5 days, maybe 4 if everything goes perfectly. Ray's nodded. "Make it 3. I'll handle the crew selection and run interference with the Solarians. They're still expecting us to roll over and submit." As she turned to leave, Ibrahim called after her. "Admiral, what if we're wrong? What if it doesn't work?" Reyes paused at the doorway. "Then humanity joins the long list of civilizations that the Solarian Empire has conquered and forgotten. But at least we'll go down fighting." 3 days later, alarms blared throughout Earth's defense network. The Solarian delegation ship had departed orbit without warning, and long-range sensors detected multiple vessels approaching from the edge of the solar system. "They're early," Rise muttered, staring at the tactical display in Project Eclipse's command center. 7 Solarian warships had appeared just beyond Mars' orbit, massive vessels that dwarfed anything in Earth's fleet. "Integration fleet," General Okafor said grimly. "Standard Solarian procedure, according to the intelligence we've gathered. They establish a perimeter, jam communications, and begin landing occupation forces at strategic locations." Reyes turned to Ibrahim. "Is Umbra ready?" The scientist's face was drawn with exhaustion after 3 days of nonstop work. "As ready as it will ever be. Core systems are operational. The primary mechanism has been calibrated to Solarian energy signatures based on our scans. The crew completed their final simulation run an hour ago. Success rate: 78% in full combat scenarios. It's the best we can do without actual field testing." Reyes nodded. "It will have to be enough." She activated the facility-wide communication system. "All Eclipse personnel, this is Admiral Reyes. Operation Shadowfall is now in effect. Umbra crew, report to your stations. Launch in 30 minutes. As the command center erupted into activity, Reyes made her way to the ship. Captain Chen met her at the airlock, already dressed in the specialized flight suit designed for Umbra's unique environment. "Are we really doing this?" Chen asked quietly. 7 of us against 7 of their warships. "We're not going to engage them directly," Reyes reminded him. "This is a demonstration. One shot to prove the technology works. If it does, maybe they'll reconsider whether Earth is worth the trouble. And if it doesn't?" Reyes didn't answer. They both knew what failure meant. 28 minutes later, the ESS Umbra detached from its moorings and moved silently through the massive underwater tunnel that led from the secret facility to the open ocean. Once clear of the continental shelf, the spherical vessel rose from the water, shedding droplets that glittered in the moonlight. Without a sound, without visible propulsion, it accelerated upward, punching through the atmosphere at a rate that would have torn conventional ships apart. In orbit, Earth's regular defense fleet had mobilized. 30 vessels of varying sizes, the pinnacle of human military technology. Against even one Solarian warship, They wouldn't last 5 minutes. Solarian fleet has established high orbit over the northern hemisphere, reported Lieutenant Park from the sensor station. They're broadcasting demands for immediate surrender and compliance with integration protocols. Any response from Earth governments? Rise asked. Most are scrambling to understand what's happening. A few have already indicated willingness to comply. Defense fleet is holding position but hasn't engaged. Rise nodded. Take us out, Lieutenant. Full acceleration. I want to be at engagement range in 10 minutes. As the Umbra streaked through space, invisible to conventional sensors thanks to its light-absorbing hull, Rise felt a moment of doubt. They were betting everything on an untested technology, on a theory developed by studying the enemy's cast-off educational materials and limited scans. If they were wrong, Admiral, Chen said, interrupting her thoughts. Incoming transmission from the Solarian command ship. Put it through. The main display flickered, showing a Solarian officer whose ornate uniform and extensively modified facial ridges marked him as high-ranking. His expression, as far as humans could interpret it, showed surprise. Unidentified Earth vessel, he said, his translator rendering his words in precise, emotionless English. You have not been authorized for orbital operations during integration procedures. Power down and prepare for boarding. Rise stood from her command chair, facing the screen directly. This is Admiral Elena Rise of the Earth Defense Force. We do not recognize your authority in our system. You will withdraw your vessels immediately. The Solarian commander's ridges flashed with blue pulses. Amusement. Your primitive scanning technology clearly failed to accurately assess our capabilities. Allow me to demonstrate. The transmission cut off. Moments later, Lieutenant Park called out, "Energy spike. They're charging weapons." "Evasive maneuvers," Chen suggested. Rise shook her head. "No. Hold position. This is what we came for." The Solarian ships fired simultaneously. 7 beams of concentrated energy that converged on the Umbra's position. For a moment, the black sphere was illuminated in blinding blue-white light as the beams struck. Then, something unprecedented happened. Instead of exploding or being vaporized, the Umbra began to absorb the energy. The beams didn't reflect or dissipate. They seemed to bend around the sphere's surface, being drawn into it like water into a drain. The ship's perfect black surface began to shimmer with a subtle pattern of light, growing more intense as more energy was consumed. Primary mechanism functioning at optimal levels, Ibrahim reported from the engineering station, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Energy conversion at 93% efficiency, better than our simulations predicted. Their weapons have no effect, Chen said, unable to keep the wonder from his voice. No, Rais corrected him. Their weapons are having exactly the effect we want. Power levels. Ibrahim checked her readings. Storage capacity at 62% and rising rapidly. At this rate, we'll reach full capacity in approximately 40 seconds. On the tactical display, the Solarian ships had ceased fire, clearly confused by the unexpected result of their attack. After a brief pause, they fired again, this time with greater intensity. The result was the same. The Umbra absorbed the energy, its surface patterns growing brighter and more complex. Storage capacity at maximum, Ibrahim announced. Ready for redistribution on your command. Rais nodded. Open a channel to the Solarian command ship. When the connection was established, the Solarian commander appeared on screen again, his facial ridges now pulsing with rapid flashes of red, the equivalent of human alarm or anger. What technology is this? He demanded. Identify its source immediately. This technology is human, Rais replied calmly. Developed by Earth scientists for Earth's defense. We studied your educational materials carefully, Commander. Your people have been the dominant power for so long that your science has stagnated. You stopped looking for new approaches centuries ago. The commander's ridges darkened. Impossible. No primitive species cold. We're not primitive, Rais interrupted. We're just different. And now, with your permission, I'd like to demonstrate the second function of our new defense system. Before the Solarian could respond, Rais nodded to Ibrahim. Target their smallest vessel. Minimal power, just enough to disable, not destroy. Ibrahim entered the commands. The patterns of light swirling across the Umbra's surface suddenly concentrated into a single point, then erupted outward in a beam of energy that struck the designated Solarian ship. The beam wasn't like conventional weapons fire. It moved in strange, almost fluid patterns, bypassing the Solarian shields as if they weren't there. When it struck the hull, the Solarian ship's lights flickered and died. Its weapons systems went offline, and it began to drift. Direct hit, Park reported. Their power systems are offline, but life support appears functional. The other ships are repositioning. Open channel to all Solarian vessels, Rais ordered. When the channel was established, she spoke clearly and firmly. This was a demonstration. We could have targeted your command ship or used full power to destroy rather than disable. The choice is yours, Commander. Leave our system peacefully, or discover what happens when you push humans into a corner. For several tense moments, there was no response. Then, one by one, the Solarian ships began to power up their FTL drives. Within minutes, they had disappeared from sensors, leaving only the disabled vessel behind. They're retreating, Chen asked, disbelief evident in his voice. Tactically withdrawing, Rais corrected. They'll be back, and in greater numbers. But we've bought ourselves time, and proved the Eclipse technology works. She turned to Ibrahim, who was staring at her console in amazement. How soon can we build more ships like Umbra? The scientist looked up, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten in the excitement of success. With the data we've gathered from this encounter, we can improve the design, streamline production. 6 months for 3 more vessels. Maybe less if we get international cooperation now that the threat is real. Rais nodded. Then we have work to do. The Solarians will return, expecting to face one ship with this technology. Instead, they'll find an entire fleet. And by then, who knows what other surprises will have developed. As the Umbra turned back toward Earth, its mission successful beyond their highest hopes, Rais felt a glimmer of something she hadn't experienced since the Solarians first appeared in Earth's skies. Hope. Humanity had been underestimated, dismissed as primitive and insignificant. But in doing so, the Solarian Empire had made a critical mistake. They had given humans a reason to innovate. The Reckoning and the Rise. 3 months after the ESS Umbra's encounter with the Solarian Integration Fleet, Earth had transformed. The video footage of the confrontation, leaked strategically to every nation, had united humanity in a way that no crisis, no war, no external threat had ever managed before. Old conflicts were set aside, resources pooled, and the technology behind Project Eclipse shared with scientists worldwide. Admiral Rais stood in the expanded command center of what was now called the Eclipse Defense Initiative, watching as holographic displays tracked the construction of 15 new vessels based on the Umbra design. Each incorporated improvements based on the data gathered during the first encounter. Moscow facility reports Phantom and Spectre are ready for field tests. Captain Chen reported, scrolling through updates on his tablet. Beijing has completed work on Dragon's Shadow. The European Union shipyard in orbit reports Nova Eclipse will be operational next week. Rais nodded, studying the global deployment map. And our early warning system. Fully operational. Detection arrays beyond Neptune's orbit give us a 2-hour warning of any FTL arrival in the system. Dr. Ibrahim approached, carrying her own data tablet. 3 months of adequate sleep, and the validation of her life's work had erased the exhaustion from her face, replacing it with purpose. The integration modifications to the primary mechanism are complete, she reported. All new vessels will be able to share absorbed energy through the quantum network. One ship can charge, another can fire, all can defend. And the Solarian vessel? Rais asked. Ibrahim smiled slightly. A technological gold mine. Their engineers built on principles established centuries ago without questioning the foundations. Efficient, yes, but inflexible. We've already identified 7 critical vulnerabilities in their core systems. Before Rice could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Lieutenant Park's voice came over the communication system, tight with urgency. Admiral to command. Immediate. Long-range sensors detect multiple FTL signatures at the edge of the system. Reyes, Chen, and Ibrahim rushed to the command center, where the main display showed a tactical map of the solar system. At the outer edge, beyond Pluto's orbit, red markers appeared one after another. 20, 30, 45 signatures, Park counted, his voice growing more concerned with each number. Largest Solarian force ever recorded in a single location, according to the intelligence database. They're not taking any chances this time, Chen murmured. Rice studied the display, noting the formation and ship classes. How many of our vessels are combat ready? 7, including Umbra, Chen replied. Plus Earth's conventional defense fleet, for whatever that's worth against this force. Rice nodded, her decision already made. Deploy all Eclipse vessels. Formation Echo 7. I'll command from Umbra. Dr. Ibrahim, coordinate from here. I want real-time analysis of any adaptations in their weapons or tactics. As Reyes headed for the launch bay, Ibrahim called after her. Admiral, the new ships haven't been fully tested in combat conditions. The integration system is theoretical at this point. Then today we go from theory to practice, Reyes replied without slowing her pace. 30 minutes later, the ESS Umbra led a formation of 7 black spherical vessels out of Earth's orbit, moving to intercept the approaching Solarian armada. Though outnumbered more than 6-1, Rice felt a strange calm as she settled into the command chair on Umbra's bridge. All Eclipse vessels report ready, Chen announced from his station. Quantum network is stable. Integration systems online. Open channel to all Earth forces, Rice ordered. When the channel was established, she addressed not just the crews of the Eclipse ships, but all the conventional vessels that had formed a secondary defense line closer to Earth. This is Admiral Reyes. 3 months ago, one ship with experimental technology faced down the Solarian integration fleet and sent them running. Today, they've returned with overwhelming force, believing numbers will prevail where technology failed. They're wrong. Every Eclipse vessel represents the pinnacle of human ingenuity, created in defiance of those who thought us primitive. Today, we don't just defend Earth. We announce humanity's place among the stars. Stand fast. Hold the line. Make them regret ever setting course for our home. The Solarian Armada emerged from FTL travel in perfect formation. A massive wall of ships stretching across space, their hulls gleaming with the golden-silver alloys that marked Imperial construction. At the center, a vessel nearly twice the size of the others dominated the formation. The Imperial Dreadnought, the personal flagship of a Solarian High Commander. They're sending a message, Chen observed. So are we, Rice replied. Hold position. Let them come to us. The Solarian fleet advanced methodically, maintaining their formation. When they reached weapons range, they paused, and a communication request came through. Put it on screen, Rice ordered. The display showed a Solarian unlike any they had encountered before. Taller, with more elaborate ridge patterns and skin that shifted through colors as he spoke, he wore a uniform laden with symbols of rank and achievement. I am High Commander Zorn of the Solarian Imperial Armada, he announced without preamble. Your act of defiance against the integration fleet was unprecedented and has been noted in Imperial records. However, resistance is ultimately futile. Surrender now, and your species will be permitted to exist under Imperial rule. Continue this pointless struggle, and we will be forced to classify Earth as a threat requiring elimination. Reyes stood from her command chair, facing the screen directly. High Commander, I am Admiral Elena Reyes of Earth. We've studied your history extensively since our first encounter. In 5,000 years, the Solarian Empire has encountered 273 spacefaring species. All were incorporated into your empire, willingly or otherwise. None ever successfully resisted. She paused, allowing a slight smile. That record ends today. Earth will not surrender. Earth will not be integrated. And after today, the galaxy will know that the Solarian Empire is not invincible. The High Commander's skin darkened to a deep purple, the Solarian equivalent of rage. You have made your choice. The consequences will be absolute. The transmission cut off, and immediately, the Solarian fleet began to move, spreading out to surround the much smaller human formation. They're adapting their tactics, Chen noted, trying not to give us concentrated energy sources to absorb. As expected, Rise replied. Initiate Integration Protocol 1. All vessels, defensive formation, maximum absorption capacity. The 7 Eclipse ships rearranged themselves into a tight cluster, just as the Solarian fleet opened fire. Unlike the previous encounter, where all ships had fired simultaneously at a single target, now they staggered their attacks, firing in waves from different directions. They're trying to overwhelm our absorption capacity, Park reported from sensors. Energy levels rising across all vessels, but distributed unevenly. That's where our integration system comes in, Rice said. Activate quantum network. Balance energy levels across all vessels. Ibrahim's voice came through the communication system from command. Quantum network active. Energy redistribution in progress. On the tactical display, Rice watched as energy levels equalized across all 7 ships. When one vessel absorbed more energy than it could handle, the excess was instantly transferred to others with greater capacity. The Solarian tactic failed. Instead of overloading individual ships, they were simply charging the entire human fleet faster. All vessels at 70% capacity and rising, Chen reported. Integration system functioning perfectly. The Solarian fleet seemed to realize their approach wasn't working. They adjusted again, concentrating fire on 2 Eclipse vessels, while maneuvering others to block potential counterattacks. They're learning, Rise observed. Good. Initiate Phase 2. Target their flanking vessels. Disable only. No destruction unless necessary. 7 beams of energy erupted from the Eclipse formation, each striking a different Solarian ship. The effects were immediate. Systems failed. Weapons went offline. Propulsion died. 7 of the massive alien vessels drifted powerless in space. The Solarian fleet paused, clearly reassessing. Then, to Rice's surprise, all remaining ships concentrated their fire on Umbra alone, pouring energy into the flagship in quantities that dwarfed anything they had faced before. They've identified us as the command vessel, Chen said, gripping his console as the ship vibrated under the assault. Energy levels climbing rapidly, 80%, 90%, approaching maximum capacity. Raids remained calm. Exactly as we hoped. Initiate final integration protocol. Ibrahim's voice came through again, tense but excited. Final integration active. Umbra is now the focal point. All vessels, channel excess energy to Admiral Rice's position. As the Solarian fleet continued their concentrated attack on Umbra, something unprecedented happened. The other 6 Eclipse vessels began to glow with intense patterns of light, but instead of releasing energy outward, they directed it toward Umbra. The flagship became the center of a web of energy, absorbing not just the Solarian attacks, but the combined power of the entire human fleet. On the bridge, warning signals blared as the ship's systems struggled to contain the massive energy influx. Storage capacity at 120% and rising, Chen reported, his voice tight with concern. We're exceeding design parameters. The structural integrity is holding, Ibrahim countered through the communication link. The reinforcements are working. Containment field stable at elevated levels. Raids watched the tactical display, waiting for the perfect moment. The The Solarian fleet, seeing their attacks having no apparent effect, began to reposition for a new strategy. At the center of their formation, the Imperial dreadnought moved forward, its massive weapons charging for what would clearly be a devastating attack. Now, Reyes ordered quietly, "Target the Imperial dreadnought." Full release. For a moment, the Umbra seemed to darken, as if drawing in all available light from its surroundings. Then, with a silent pulse of energy that distorted space itself, it released its accumulated power in a single focused beam. The beam struck the Imperial dreadnought directly. Unlike the previous, controlled bursts used to disable smaller vessels, this was raw, overwhelming force. The dreadnought's shields flared briefly before collapsing entirely. The beam continued through, striking the massive vessel's core systems. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the dreadnought began to break apart, massive sections of hull peeling away as internal systems catastrophically failed. There was no explosion, just the methodical, inevitable disintegration of what had been the pride of the Solarian fleet. The remaining Solarian vessels froze in position, their synchronized movements suddenly chaotic and uncertain. "Open channel to all Solarian ships," Reyes ordered, her voice perfectly steady despite the enormity of what had just occurred. When the channel opened, she spoke without triumph or gloating, just calm certainty. "Your High Commander is dead. Your dreadnought destroyed. 7 of your vessels disabled. This was not our full capability, but merely a demonstration of what happens when you underestimate humanity. Return to your empire. Tell them Earth is not available for integration, now or ever. Any future incursion into our solar system will be met with immediate and total response." For several long moments, there was no reply. Then, one by one, the Solarian ships began to activate their FTL drives. Within minutes, only the 7 disabled vessels remained, drifting powerless in the void. "They're retreating," Chen said, his voice filled with disbelief and growing exhilaration. "Admiral, we've won." "We've won a battle," Reyes corrected him. "Not the war. But yes, Lieutenant Park, Signal Earth, the Solarian threat has been neutralized." As the Eclipse fleet regrouped and began the journey home, Reyes remained on the bridge of Umbra, staring at the tactical display where the remnants of the Imperial dreadnought continued to drift apart. She felt no joy in its destruction, no triumph in the death of the High Commander and his crew, only the grim satisfaction of knowing that humanity would survive. 6 months later, Admiral Reyes stood before the newly formed United Earth Council in Geneva, completing her briefing on the expansion of the Eclipse Defense Initiative. With 30 operational vessels now protecting Earth and our colonies on Mars and Europa, we have established a defense perimeter that extends throughout the solar system, she explained, gesturing to the holographic display behind her. "Long-range sensors give us advance warning of any approach, and the quantum network allows our ships to respond as a unified force." "And the Solarians?" asked the council chairperson, a former diplomat from Singapore. "Any sign of their return?" "None," Reyes replied. "Our deep space probes have detected increased Solarian activity at the borders of what we now know to be their territory, approximately 7 light-years from our system. They appear to be establishing a quarantine zone, keeping their own ships out rather than trying to keep us in." A murmur ran through the council chamber. The representative from Brazil leaned forward. "So they fear us now." "I believe they respect us," Reyes corrected. "Which is preferable. Fear leads to desperate actions. Respect allows for diplomacy." Speaking of diplomacy, the European Union representative interjected. "What of the Solarian crews we captured? The disabled vessels?" "The crews have been treated according to international protocols for prisoners of war. As for the vessels themselves, they've provided invaluable insights into Solarian technology. Dr. Ibrahim's team has made significant breakthroughs by studying their systems." As if on cue, the chamber doors opened, and Dr. Ibrahim entered, accompanied by a surprising figure, a Solarian in civilian attire rather than a military uniform. "Council members," Ibrahim announced, May I present Science Director Terrace of the Solarian Diplomatic Corps. He arrived via shuttle at our Mars outpost 3 days ago with a proposal. The Solarian stepped forward, his facial ridges showing patterns that the humans in the room had learned to recognize as indicating formal respect. Esteemed representatives of Earth, Terrace began, his translator rendering his words with careful precision. I come before you not as a conqueror or integrator, but as an envoy seeking mutual understanding. The events of the past year have revised certain imperial perspectives on emerging civilizations. He paused, looking directly at Admiral Reyes. Your technology, what you call the eclipse mechanism, represents an approach to energy manipulation that has not been seen in our galaxy for millennia. It has caused considerable reconsideration within our scientific community. The chairperson regarded the alien carefully. Are you proposing an alliance, Director Terrace? An exchange, the Solarian corrected. Knowledge for knowledge, technology for technology. A relationship between equals rather than the standard integration protocol. Rice studied the alien, noting the subtle differences in his appearance and manner from the military Solarians they had encountered before. There was a curiosity there, an intellectual hunger that transcended species. And your empire has authorized this proposal? She asked. Terrace's ridges flickered with what humans now recognized as wry amusement. The Imperial Council has adjusted its policies regarding Earth. When a civilization demonstrates the capacity to destroy an Imperial dreadnought, certain accommodations can be made. The council chamber filled with discussion as representatives debated the implications of this unprecedented offer. Rice stepped away from the central podium, moving to where Ibrahim stood watching the proceedings. Do you believe him? Rice asked quietly. Ibrahim nodded. I've spent 3 days questioning him about Solarian science. His knowledge is genuine, and so is his fascination with our approach. The Empire has been stagnant, Admiral. They haven't faced a real challenge in centuries. We woke them up. For better or worse, Rice mused. For better, Ibrahim insisted. They need us as much as we need them. They just don't fully realize it yet. Their science has reached a plateau. Ours is just beginning to climb. As the council continued their debate, Rice found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. 6 months ago, Earth had stood on the brink of subjugation, dismissed as primitive and unworthy of respect. Now, they were negotiating as equals with one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. All because humans, when pushed into a corner, didn't surrender, they innovated. We have conditions, the chairperson announced, bringing the chamber to order. Earth will maintain its independence. Our defense initiatives will continue. Any exchange of technology must be mutual and balanced. Terrace inclined his head. These terms are acceptable. The Empire recognizes Earth's sovereignty and the right of humans to determine their own path among the stars. As formal discussions began between Earth's representatives and the Solarian envoy, Rice slipped quietly from the chamber. Outside, on the balcony overlooking Lake Geneva, she gazed up at the evening sky, where the first stars were becoming visible. Captain Chen joined her, offering a data tablet. The final reports from the Jupiter shipyards. The first exploration vessel with Eclipse technology will be ready for launch next month. Where should we send it? Rice smiled, taking the tablet and scrolling through the specifications of humanity's first true starship. Not a warship, but a vessel of discovery built with the lessons learned from necessity. Outward, she said simply. Always outward. Above them, countless stars beckoned, no longer distant, unreachable points of light, but destinations. And among them, perhaps, other civilizations who had been told they were primitive, insignificant, unworthy, waiting for someone to show them that the galaxy's established powers weren't infallible after all. The Solarian Empire had arrived at Earth expecting submission and found defiance instead. They had dismissed human technology as primitive, only to discover that innovation thrived best when underestimated. They had mocked Earth's experimental ship until it annihilated their fleet and changed the balance of power forever.